On January the 12th, 2025, we launched our Chronological Christie podcast, not knowing if anyone would be interested in listening to us chatter on about the works of the Queen of Crime. But it took off in a way that we never expected.
When we started, we set ourselves a target of a certain number of downloads that we would consider a success for the first year. And as we round out that first year, we're at 3 times that number and have an international audience across 55 countries. Amazing. And it's all thanks to you, the folks who have listened, left reviews, or commented on the various podcast platforms, or connected with us on social media.
As a way to celebrate the first year and as a thank you, we thought it would be fun to share the Meet the Hosts episode that is only normally available on our Patreon account.
The Patreon account is a great way to find more of our exclusive Agatha-adjacent episodes, such as Agatha Slept Here, about our visits to Greenway, Abney Hall and the Old Swan Hotel, The Grand Tour, a review of both the book on Agatha's early travels and the related David Suchet TV series, Agatha and the Doctor, a look at Agatha's encounter with the 10th Doctor from the Doctor Who TV series, and lots more to come.
Patreon members also get early access to the regular Chronological Christie episodes ahead of their general release dates. You can find all the details at patreon.com/Chronological Christie. Thanks again for all your support and interest. From me, Jill.
And Alan. And now, the Meet the Hosts episode.
Welcome to the Agatha Adjacent Patreon podcast, in which a long-time Agatha Christie collector and her Christie novice husband discuss all things Agatha Christie outside of her own writing. Over the last several months, we've had feedback from listeners wanting to know a bit more about us and how we got interested in the world of Agatha Christie, so you are about to find out.
So who are we?
I am Gillian Porter, a long-time Agatha Christie reader and collector, mostly known as Jill.
And I'm her husband, Alan Porter, who after almost 40 years of sharing a house with Agatha Christie books, as well as deciding to read them, thinks he should know more about her and her world. So let's kick things off with Jill's backstory.
Well, here we go. I grew up in the suburbs of Bristol in the UK, and from a young age, probably about 9 or 10, I started reading my mum's books. These were mostly Agatha Christie, Niall Marsh, and Dorothy L. Sayers. My mum's a mystery reader, like me. I really wish I could remember what my gateway Agatha Christie was, but I just can't, which is really annoying because it obviously entranced me enough to keep reading all these years. Growing up, we used to watch a lot of the Sunday afternoon movies if it was wet, which it can be a lot in the UK. So I grew up loving a varied style of movie, but I know there were some Agatha Christie ones in there. And I know a lot of Agatha Christie fans and Agatha Christie herself hate them, but I have a fondness for the Margaret Rutherford movies as they remind me of those afternoons, snuggled up on a grey rainy day, watching something silly and enjoying it with my family. I've always read a lot, and in general, I'll pretty much read anything, especially when I was younger. When we used to go to the library, I'd just pick up whatever I could. My mum used to say I would addle my brain, whatever that means, with too much reading, but my dad was always a supporter of it. My mum and dad have always been readers, but not quite in the, I would say, same level that Alan and I are. Alan and I met at college, and one of the first things we shared from the start was a love of books and reading. Our first house together was way too small, really, to collect books. But when we moved to a bigger house in anticipation of having a family, we also had the added bonus of having enough room to have bookshelves. And among those were the beginnings of my Christie collection. As with most people, when our girls were small, I didn't have a lot of time for reading. So rereading an Agatha Christie or enjoying a Georgette Heyer romance or mystery were very relaxing with the limited time I had for reading. When we moved to Maryland in the States, we used to enjoy visiting a lot of secondhand bookstores, and we all enjoyed picking up books. Mine were mostly mysteries, and my day was made if I found an Agatha Christie one I didn't own before. And what was also interesting is at the time, I just didn't realize that some of the Agatha Christie books had different titles in the States. So I'd go home all excited I'd bought a new one, and then find out when I got home I actually had that. It just has a different title. That got a bit frustrating at times. And some of these times were in the baby years of the internet. So it wasn't always easy to know what was what with those books. Now there's lots of lovely lists for everybody to check and know whether they've got the same book or not. In the UK, I was a qualified lab technician, but after we moved to the US, going back to school to get recertified wasn't going to work for us. But over the years, I've had some very interesting jobs. I worked for a criminal attorney for a while. My last job, I worked for a local county government, managing meetings and taking care of the archives, which was also interesting. I now own all of the works under Agatha Christie and have a few left to collect under Mary Westmacott. I have a fair amount of novels and non-fiction related to Agatha Christie and her world, but there is so much more to look for. It makes book shopping fun and frustrating sometimes. Alan and I recently worked together co-writing the James Bond lexicon book. Between us, we read all the books, comics, watched all the movies and TV shows, which was mostly fun. And it was good to work together on something. So when I retired last year, we were looking for another project to do together. And I felt it was time we did something I was more interested in than Alan was. Okay, Alan, over to you for your story.
I like the way you emphasised that working together on the book was mostly fun.
Well, come on. Some of the stuff we had to read or watch was pretty terrible.
Yeah, well, it took us 10 years to do that project on and off.
Not 10 years,
on and off. Not 10 years consistently, but 10 years between us starting it and actually finally publishing it. Yes.
Yeah, so, and parts were painful. There's no getting away from that.
That's very true. That's very true. But we're still here and we're still talking to each other, clearly. So.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't painful between us, but some of the comic stories I had to read were painful, and the James Bond Jr. TV show you had to watch, I mean, that was a huge sacrifice because I know that was terrible.
We suffered for our art, we did.
But we did it, and the book's out there for all eternity.
I guess it's my turn, like Jill said. I'm actually from a different part of the UK originally. As Jill said, she's from Bristol in the southwest. I was originally from a small village just outside of Manchester in the UK, which is in the northwest. And I spent probably around the first 20 years of my life there in this small village, growing up on the banks of the River Mersey. And it was a lot of fun. And as far as Agatha Christie's goes, I think I've always been aware of Agatha. You can't be a Brit and not be. I mean, it's a bit like not being aware of Doctor Who or the Beatles, I guess. It's just part of the cultural zeitgeist you grow up in. She's a familiar name, you know who she is. So she's always been around in my life, but I can't say it was a particular topic of interest. I know we brand Chronological Christie podcast series as me being a Christie novice. Well, to be honest, I'm not a total Christie novice. I had read odd Christie on and off over the years. I've always been a voracious reader and a book collector too. My bedrooms was always full of books and series of books. I've always been a bit of a completist when it comes to that side of things, and magazines. Like Jill, I would read anything I could get my hands on. My weekly trips to the library with my dad were a highlight of the week. I'd read the back of the cereal packet if I didn't have anything else to read. I was always reading. I'm sure I read some odd Christies on and off during that time. One thing I sort of half remember, I don't recall exactly which title it was, but I do remember reading an Agatha Christie at some point, probably when I was equivalent of high school. And I think I figured out the whodunit pretty quickly, and I was like, oh, okay, what's all the fuss about? It's not that clever. I wish I could remember which title it was, because I feel very superior about it. I'll be interested if I get to that title during our reread, if I actually recognize it. I was like, I don't really see what all the fuss is about Agatha Christie. And I was more into science fiction and adventure type thrillers pretty much for most of my reading career, and still am. Still read a lot of both of those. Like Jill, I actually do remember watching some old black and white Miss Marple movies on a rainy, wet Sunday afternoon. In my case, with my grandmother, who loved her classic movies and introduced me to a lot of classic movies, a lot of classic movie characters. It's through her I got to know characters like Tarzan and Alan Quatermain and all these high adventure stuff. She loved adventure movies, and she loved noir movies, and she loved her mystery movies. And for some reason, it was always the Margaret Rutherford Miss Marple ones that stick in my mind. So it's interesting listening to Jill just now. I guess we were both watching the same movie at the same time when we were a lot younger, years before we met, which is sort of freaky when you think about it.
It is kind of freaky, but it's also cool.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
As Jill said, we met at college on the first day of college, and I guess that's the point that Christie entered my life in a serious way. Over the years, we watched the TV shows and all the movies together. If there was something Christie on TV or a Christie movie, we would go see it or watch it. So I've seen all the David Suchet shows. I've seen most of the Miss Marple's ones, most of the movies, some of them several times. I've even read some of the biographies. I'm a big fan of biography. There's obviously a few Christie biographies in the house, but I still wasn't reading her books. And even though we're both serious bibliophiles and book collectors, and there are a lot of them in the house, it's sort of strange, really. I don't really know why I'd never picked up any of her books and reread them at that point. I think just my mind was elsewhere. After college, I started what turned out to be a long career in the corporate content world on both the technical and marketing side. Sort of semi-retired now, just doing a little bit of consulting. During that time, opportunity arose to make a move to the USA. We were originally only going to come for 3 years just to check it out, have a bit of an adventure. But as of next year, we'll have been here in the States 30 years, having lived in Maryland, California, Illinois, Texas, and now we're back where we started in Maryland. And I've also been writing for around 30 plus years now. I will say I wanted to be a writer from about the age of 8. Didn't really start writing until I was in my 30s, thanks to Jill buying me one of those, we'll teach you to write, and if you don't make your money back, we'll refund the course money things. I don't think I got beyond module 2 before I sold my first magazine article, and I've been writing ever since. I now have around 40 book publishing credits as an author or contributor, several hundred magazine articles. I mainly write pop culture-related nonfiction, although my latest book is actually a non-fiction aviation history book. I write high-adventure style short stories and novellas, plus the occasional comics gig, which I really love, but don't get enough of. And I've had a couple of novels on the go for years, and I really should follow Jill's example and actually finish them. You didn't mention your novel.
I didn't, and I have something else I missed as well that I need to add at the end.
Okay, we'll come back to you then. I should follow Jill's example and actually finish the novels I've been working on for years. And the podcasting thing came about because after guesting on several podcasts over the years, around 8 years ago, I ended up co-hosting a James Bond network, which I still do. 4 years ago, started my own podcast on the early days of the Beatles, which is also still going. And as Jill said, we were looking to do another project together. We talked about podcasting together. And as we were looking around for a topic, there was that bookcase. And in our new place, it's actually a purpose-built custom bookcase just for the Agatha Christie collection. And every time I walked past it, all those Christies were just calling out for me to finally get around to reading them. That's pretty much what kicked off the Chronological Christie podcast. And on that note, I'm going to pass it back to Jill, who obviously has a couple of things she wants to add.
Yeah, so it was when you were talking about feeling smug because you'd worked out who done it. Just wanted to talk about, because I realized in all that, I never actually talked about why I love Agatha Christie so much. And for me, it's not the who done it. It can be the how done it. But for me, it's the way she writes about how people react, their reasons for doing what they do, the way innocent people react being interviewed after a murder, how people interact with each other. I feel she wrote that so well. Didn't use a lot of fancy wordage. She wasn't like Dorothy L. Sayers. She wasn't school educated. She wasn't college educated. And some of like the Dorothy L. Sayers books can lose me a bit because I find them they lose the story because she's a bit busy being pretentious. But I find with Agatha Christie, they're very approachable and she's funny. But she makes the characters seem very real with just a vague sketch of them. It's all about the way people react in things, and she is so very good at making them react in ridiculous ways that I can imagine most people would in certain situations. Even if you haven't done anything wrong, when the police come in or you're being investigated by Poirot, people do stupid shit. So there we go. So those are the things that attract me to Agatha Christie. I feel she is so good at giving you those reasons, and the books for me are very compelling. I don't really try and work out who done it because a lot of the time I don't actually care very much about who done it. I don't think it necessarily adds a lot to the book when you find out who done it, apart from Roger Ackroyd. I would say that was really the only one that does. Yeah, Alan said about he needs to follow me in finishing his books. It's funny, he's been writing his novels a lot longer than me. I only started writing, about 10 years ago now. I wasn't very well. I was having problems sleeping. Somebody had said, imagine yourself somewhere you like, walking around. A lot of people say they imagine they're walking on the beach relaxing. We're not really beach people. So I had myself walking around New York, the Met Museum, all those places, and it turned into a novel, which we published this year. We also have our own publishing company now, so we're going to be very busy in retirement. So I finished that one. It's called Trust Issues. I wrote it under my maiden name, Gilly Kent. I'm working on the second one for that. On that one, and I'm working on another one too, which one day I'll actually finish when I get my feedback from Alan.
No, I have to really give you those notes now. That's recording on the record that
Yeah, you're accountable now.
Oh, yeah, I am. That's actually interesting what you said about not caring about the whodunit and more the style and the way it's done. That's one thing I have discovered on the podcast. The whodunit is interesting, with the odd exception. It's not really necessary for me to enjoy the story. Sometimes it's about the mechanics of how it was done. Really impresses me. It's also about her writing style and the development of her writing style. Sometimes how it reaches a peak and then drops and reaches and then goes back up. It's about the development of the characters. Like I said earlier, when I read it and figured out who done it, and I was like, I don't get what all the fuss is about. Now I understand what the fuss is about, and that she is a very good writer, a very good developer of plots and character. If not necessarily, with the odd exception, a brilliant mystery writer in terms of the mystery itself. It's more about the construction of the worlds that she brings and the characters. And like I said, often it's about the mechanics of how a crime was committed rather than the mystery of who did it. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes. The whodunit is kind of necessary, as it is with all these books, but I don't think it's the big thing for me. It's all the twists and turns beforehand that make me want to read it. It's about the people she creates. And like you said, the mechanics, the how done it as well, is also very fascinating.
Cool. Well, I guess that sort of brings us to the end of this little intro. Thanks for those folks who asked us to do this. It was actually fun to sit down and think about our Christie journeys to this point. And we're looking forward to where things go. And we're really looking forward to also doing this Agatha Adjacent Patreon exclusive podcast series as well. So if you're listening to this, thank you for being a Patreon. And thank you for supporting the Chronological Christie podcast. Any last words, Jill?
No, just thank you. This was a great idea.
All right, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Agatha Adjacent podcast and for subscribing to our Patreon page. I think I just said that, but I'm going to say it again. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments section. You'll see one at the bottom of the post where this podcast is. Or you can find us on social media. Jill, where can you be found?
I can be found either on Instagram or TikTok on the Chronological Christie accounts.
And I can be found on most social platforms by searching for @AlanJPorter or via my author's website at alanjporter.com. If you want to keep up with our various writing projects, you can sign up for the free newsletter at alanjporter.substack.com.
Please join us for our next episode where we will be discussing our recent trip to England, where we visited various Agatha Christie related locations. We look forward to you joining us.
The music used in this episode was extracted from I'm Somebody's Somebody Now by the Joe Venuti Orchestra and is a public domain recording. The Chronological Christie podcasts are a production of Megrin Entertainment, a division of 4J's Group, LLC.